First, I'd like to give a little context for the title of the video, which might not be clear to everyone. I mentioned this very briefly in my talk with Spetsnaz, but I want to expand on it a bit. So I was playing Overwatch, quick play, with an associate. We were in discussion on support characters, specifically the healing ones, and I mentioned that women predominantly play this character, Mercy. She's a female. She heals with a staff. She's very passive. She's not terribly demanding, although she does require good positioning, etc. Now, long story short, it turned out that I was not in the group chat, but in the team chat with the randoms. So I expounded on this a bit and said everything that I wanted to say on the subject, well, not everything, but substantial amounts, in the team chat for the ears of all to hear. What ensued was interesting, and something I had actually heard before. I'm not an SJW, but, and this was followed by, but that's really sexist. Now, I'm not claiming here that the phrase itself is a popular meme. I'm not an SJW, but I have seen it a few times. I've heard it a few times. I don't think it's everyone on the internet. That's not what I'm claiming. I'm talking about a larger phenomenon here regarding anti-SJWism or SJWs in general. And he proceeded to say I was sexist, yada, 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 although there was nothing actually controversial about my statement. In fact, I would bet money that the vast majority of females who play the game Overwatch play the character Mercy, and to a lesser extent other support. Probably Mercy, Lucio, Zenyatta, on in that order, because that's the order of how demanding they are to play. Now, this guy is not unique, and this is something I've observed the past year or two. You can call it a meme, not a word-for-word meme, but in a sense, because this idea that SJWism is no longer popular, well, that's a meme or an idea that has really reached escape velocity, essentially, or critical mass is the better way of putting it. Now, it's very, very popular now to not want to be an SJW. In fact, if you are labeled that, you're probably not going to be happy about that. And I think it's interesting to point out that above all, women don't want to be labeled SJWs, the same reason they don't want to be labeled feminists these days, because women are terribly concerned about their reputations and their social standing, and it just looks bad. So the anti-SJWs, the anti-feminists, that whole crowd, in some sense, not that they, I think, actually actively sought to achieve this, achieved something in the sense that, one, SJW is a household term. I mean, everyone who uses the internet knows what an SJW is, knows, one, what an SJW is, and two, that it's not something you want to be, which is to say you don't want that moniker applied to you. Nobody wants to be called that. That's why the guy prefaced and qualified his statement before calling me a sexist, saying, I'm not an SJW, but. But, as with all mass phenomena, when something achieves critical mass, the original thought behind it really tends to become pretty diluted, and it loses its center. It deviates. And this has happened, of course, within MGTOW and many, many other phenomena, not necessarily movements. And I'm not even saying that's good or bad. It's just the way things are. So anti-SJWism, in a sense, has achieved critical mass. The price for that, I'm going to argue here, is that people, much like many people who are involved in the acronym MGTOW, don't really know about the good old days, if you want to call them that, or the golden age, or what have you. The original thought and content don't really know what it means. And I point to the example that I cited. One, there's nothing controversial about what I said. Women overwhelmingly tend to play support roles in these sorts of games. That's not controversial. And two, it didn't really matter to the guy. Now, once again, I'm arguing here that, yes, it's not cool to be an SJW now. Anti-SJWism has reached critical mass where everyone sort of knows about SJWs and doesn't want to be an SJW. No one wants a label. But they're still thinking, the vast majority of people, with their old primitive tools that evolution has given them, in addition to the socialized tools that they've accepted from their environment that they grew up in and grew into. So I'm arguing here that most people don't actually know why SJWs are stupid. They, I think they're struggling for reasons. In fact, they probably couldn't name any. They just know that they are stupid. Now, you could argue that it doesn't help to have a glut of channels like Bearing and what have you that are all about the laughs. And to be fair, I think Bearing's been pretty honest. He's there to make a buck and make people laugh. Fair enough. But that kind of approach, the lack of depth, the lack of analysis, certainly contributes to it. So what do we have now in the year 2017? Well, we have a status quo where most right-minded people, I don't mean necessarily on the right, but people who are not batshit insane, don't want to be called an SJW, probably are not SJWs in the strictest sense, but will still take umbrage at statements that they deem to be sexist. And we've actually seen this to a lesser degree with people like Sargon of Akkad and my few encounters with him. I mean, I'm small potatoes now. He's a giant. I doubt he'd address this, but sweeping under the rug statements I made regarding divorce and women and actual facts, evidence. You know, what did he say back in the day? Oh, let's just call it anti-egalitarianism. So already in the original, if you want to even call Sargon a sort of original anti-feminist, anti-SJWist, in the original content creators, there was a sort of desire to avoid going into depth on certain things and calling a spade a spade. There are various groups on the internet now, particularly on YouTube, that call a spade, albeit for different reasons. I mean, they have the alt-right with regards to some degree, genetic population differences, although it's heavily ideological. MGTOW, well, whatever it is now, but certainly back in the day, various reactionaries who look at history in depth and offer social commentary and criticism. All of these groups, for better or worse, talk about things that are not really permissible in polite conversation. It's not that Sargon won't go toe-to-toe with people like that. He's talked to me, he's talked to alt-righters, etc. It's just that he won't even entertain ideas even when evidence is presented to him. And I think that shows in the now common idea that it's not cool to be an SJW. No one really knows why it's not cool to be an SJW. I suppose people could say, well, it's because they're not factual or accurate. What does Christina Hoff Sommers call herself? The factual feminist? Nonsense like that. Well, this is the product of critical mass. I'm not saying that MGTOW has reached critical mass. I don't know if it ever will, whatever that means in the context of MGTOW, but surely we can all observe that MGTOW is very, very dilute compared to the way it used to be. The content is continually watered down. There was this, controversy a few months back involving Sandman complaining about some guy who produced even more watered down content and with a frequency that he couldn't match, and he felt he was being sort of bullied out of the market. Which I thought was pretty amusing coming from him, since he was the original sort of, I'm going to market MGTOW. Nothing really against Sandman, I just don't care anymore, but it was kind of funny. But the point is that that's just what happens with everything. And it's sad in the case of anti-SJWism, because effectively it's achieved nothing. It's simply a status symbol to not be an SJW. It's one that you want to cling to because you don't want to be called that. It's not hip. It's not cool. But there's no understanding in it. Not really. And as Barbarossa pointed out many moons ago with regards to MRAs and family court and changing the system in favor of men, Well, anti-SJWism has achieved absolutely nothing. The universities are still corrupt. They still are run on the basis of far-left politics. Sure, there are more voices to be heard. There's Jordan Peterson or people fighting back and what have you. But nothing effectively has changed. And this is actually, let's be honest, from a marketing point of view, great for the anti-feminists and anti-SJWs because they're going to always have material they can talk about, whether it's PewDiePie or whatever. Even PewDiePie's in on it now, too. But mark my words, as this becomes more and more popular, that is not being an SJW, I've seen it'll become even more diluted. I'd seen this in the earlier days. I remember talking to people that might be called purple-pilled. Say, well, you're kind of right about women and some of this, but it's really too extreme. You shouldn't generalize it. That kind of crowd, and they're always going to be in the majority. And this type of crowd, incidentally, as many of you know, will be against critical analysis of taboo topics, mostly sex differences and genetic population differences, aka race. But it's kind of disheartening and dismaying to see how this has all gone. I imagine there's a degree of inevitability to it. There's nothing controversial about claiming that most women play support roles in these sorts of games such as Overwatch. Yes, of course, there are ones that don't do that and do it well. They're rare. But we need to be honest about these things. So, yeah, there was me being honest. And a lot of this started with Gamergate and the controversy. I think that's how Sargon, the illustrious Sargon of Akkad, got started back in the day. Now, how's that been going? The only non-SJW infected company a AAA company I can think of is really CD Projekt Red. And I'm going to have a lot more say about Mass Effect Andromeda in the follow-up video because it's kind of related to this. But BioWare has gone ahead. The combat looks great in the game, but more on that later. BioWare's gone ahead and kind of doubled down on their SJWism and hypocrisy. And it's very, very interesting. Anyway, critical mass. You don't want to be an SJW these days, but it sure as hell doesn't mean fucking shit. And the people claiming not to be SJWs, well, they don't even know why they're not SJWs. They're just doing it by a popularity vote. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. I will check you out later. Enjoy your week. Bye-bye. And may the gods watch over you. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.